Facebook. I hope you know me. So this presentation, I was very grateful and fortunate to receive funding and support from the International Program for Creative Collaboration and Research of the School of Theatre, Dance, and Performance Studies, aka IPCCR. So I went to the UK for like 12 days. I was in and around London. I went to Plymouth. I went up to Manchester. I went up to Glasgow. And the point of this research was to study the way different organizations are working with people with specifically intellectual disability. And the reason I went to the UK is not that there isn't obviously amazing work happening here in the United States, but just that the scope and breadth of work being done, even just in the city of London, you know, there's organizations all over the place, almost in every corner of the city, every nook and cranny, leading community dance classes for people with disability. So, and that's exactly what I got to participate in. Across the board, I found a really strong commitment from all the organizations I interacted with, to the following 4 values. Number 1, people with disabilities contribute valuable artistic input to our dance community. Number 2, the agency and independence of participants matters. Number 3, these were dedicated training opportunities for people with disabilities. They were not charity works, this was dance education. And finally, it takes a village. There's a huge sense of community everywhere I went. Not only were carers or caregivers, family members, volunteers available in the space, but likewise, you know, people with disabilities were working and supporting with other people with disabilities, so it was just a really fluid share of support. So I'm going to jump out for a second. I forgot to mention, if you're watching again on the live stream, I'm not going to be audio describing my images in this particular presentation, but I will go ahead, and Amanda in the back, the lovely Amanda, is filming, and so I'll go ahead and insert them in another, slightly longer presentation that I'll have available on my Facebook and also on my website. Forgot to mention that at the beginning. So the methods and different training tools that different organizations were working with were pretty varied. So I'm going to go through some of the things that really made each organization I met with stand out to me. And we'll go from there. I want to start by introducing Colm Gallagher. Oh no, wrong way. Colm, if you're watching at home, hiya. Colm he's the education director for Amiki Dance Company, which is one of the companies I met with. He was also like my tour guide. He gave me a ton of research that I'm actually still sifting through all the books and papers. And he also introduced me to a bunch of different people. So here we are in the pub. But so it's important to start by just thanking him for all the help and support he gave me. So I'm going to start with my time in London. The highlight of my trip was definitely dancing with Amiki Dance Theatre in London. Amiki was founded in 1980 by Wolfgang Stange, and Wolfgang, he was amazing. So I took some classes with him. Amiki has received like numerous accolades across the UK, a lot of press, more than I can possibly go through, and their many, many years of existence. And so here I am with Wolfgang. Very nice backdrop. You can see the stage door. Maybe I'll use the mouse. So I took several community classes at the Macbeth Centre in London. This is out in West London in Hammersmith. It's a community hub, a lovely building filled with many, numerous people. So I took some performing arts classes, I took a yoga class, and I also took a bunch of community dance classes led by Wolfgang. Wolfgang started his classes with music and walking, or ambulating around, or otherwise moving around the space. There were some stretches and sensory input, massage, touch. Classes were characterized by a strong connection to the music and musicality, using the music to inform and spark music. Improvisational group tasks were assigned. such as making shapes with a group or dancing with a cane. Wolfgang would sometimes gently move people to the middle of the circle. Other times he would sort of open up the space and invite anybody in to dance, or any combination of the two that naturally arose. The highlight of these classes was definitely the witnessing and the exploring. I saw several people disappear into the music, tics and habits sliding away as we held hands and moved. I made friends easily and quickly. At one point Diane jumped on my back and was pushing me around like a push cart. Cleo jumped on behind that and made a caboose. Patsy was holding my right hand. I have no idea who was holding my left hand. We were all just dancing around, and relationships like this appeared and dissolved very quickly in the space. There was a huge sense of community spirit, and these were long classes. They were about 2 hours, so there was usually a tea break about halfway through, where everyone went over to the cafe just across the way, had some tea, some crisps, and came on back. And there is a really strong sense of human connection. I was really surprised by how emotional these classes were for me. It was like when we were dancing together, none of the other stuff mattered, not our different abilities, not our backgrounds. What mattered was the dance we were sharing. In Wolfgang's class, there was time to enjoy, time to drink tea, time to watch each other, and the space to be. I want to read a little bit just from the journal entry I made after my classes at the Macbeth Center, because I think that is sort of really summarizes my feelings. The music was the teacher and the space was the invitation. We were instructed to get a partner, then eventually groups formed. We all sat back down in our chairs and people were invited to dance to the music. Rather than rush one person out of the center back to the side to make time for everyone, Wolfgang privileged the time spent witnessing and breathing. People were watching, quiet, and totally absorbed, as John danced with abandon and a fluid, unexpected freedom. Wolfgang borrowed someone's cane and came up to the middle, where he danced alone or with someone. The cane was used as a prop. Oh, there's no sound. So sorry, don't know where the sound is.
Do you want to try the sound on the computer itself? No, on the screen.
On your laptop?
Oh, well, my laptop's not hooked up.
Do you have a remote for the projector? Because sometimes the sound is coming from, you have to.
Okay, well, maybe we watch it without sound. That's unfortunate. I have a solution. 1 second. I will play the sound from my laptop at the same time. Play this video. The mouse will be easy. Oh, it didn't start over. Well, I tried.
It's on YouTube, you can share it.
You saw it. Sorry, you just didn't hear it.
Is there an X through that speaker? Is the speaker off? On the YouTube?
Oh, yeah, it was on. I just...
Interesting.
That's a bummer. It's a shame because, like I said, the music is really a vital part of the performance. But I'll share it later. So this gentleman, John, was amazing. I shared like a really great dance with him at the Amiki rehearsals, which I'll talk about shortly. But yeah, Wolfgang kept being like, I've just never seen him dance like this. And this is the first time I've ever seen him dance, so of course I was like, well, he looks great. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, I think it really speaks to sort of the growth and development of the dancers and just their flourishment in these classes. So class Miki rehearses down the street at the Lyric Hammersmith, which is this lovely cinder block building, which actually the old theater is rebuilt inside, so you get into the theater space, and it's just like these old molding and like red seats. It's really lovely. I visited two rehearsals. I visited Young Amiki, which is the training program, and I also attended the rehearsal for the company. In the training program, they did use, some pliés and tendus, some traditional technical training, but largely this was also a task-oriented improvisational practice. Improvisational structures were set up and again given time and space to be explored. For example, everyone was given a ribbon and asked to make a shape while holding onto the ribbon in some way with the group. But again, the highlight of this exercise was really when the music was on and the groups were presenting for one another. And in this very loud, chaotic classroom, everyone was silent, sitting and watching and absorbing, and it was beautiful. There was also no question of adaptation or exclusion. Tasks were universal for everyone, and everyone was like aware of everyone else. There was, never a moment where someone was left out. Everyone was really conscious of ensuring that every member of their group was somehow a part of the activity, whether it was because you were following them or touching them, or in some way we were staying engaged. And then the Amiki rehearsals is where I sort of like simultaneously found and lost myself. In this class, it seemed we were stripped of our elements. Music and movement were the communication. Listening had little to do with language, and sometimes nothing to do with sight or sound. Some couldn't see, and some couldn't talk, and some couldn't hear, and some could move very little. And we were all there listening, moving, dancing, sensing. And the resulting art was beautiful. This one correctly. Sure. Oh, can you hook it up? Can you press? Ready? Yes. Set. Go! Oh. What's interesting is it's playing on my computer. I'm a little frustrated because I did test my technology. So I will also share this later on Facebook. It says it's actually blocked out there anyway, so I don't know.
Does you know why it's being blocked?
I will share this way. video where you saw Colum dancing with Chrissy, who's blind, on the bench, reaching around each other. It was very beautiful. And then Emmy, who's in the background with, I don't remember the other woman's name, unfortunately, but he had actually just had open heart surgery like 2 weeks ago. So it was just amazing. And like I said, in terms of the sense of community, like his carer was there. I had met his father at one of the classes at the Macbeth Center. His mother was there. She was just walking around with her iPad taking videos. You know, it was just amazing. And just sort of the beautiful movement. I just sat and wept. I don't know why I was crying, and it doesn't matter. It was just beautiful. So also while I was in London, I went out to Magpie, which most of their classes were in Bromley, which is about like 20 minutes outside of the city, so it wasn't too far. And I attended a few classes. I attended some community classes. I attended a company rehearsal, and I also took a choreographer's class, which was training the dancers to sort of make their own dances. I don't have any photos or video because I wasn't able to take them, but I do have their brochure that they gave me, which has some lovely photos from rehearsals and videos of their company. And so they have a big range of different classes, and all of their classes are focused on thematic education. So the pictures I'm sliding past here on the doc scanner are from their last performances, which were all about World War I. They did a huge research project on World War I. They talked about sort of what happened to people with disabilities during this time period, during the war. They talked about, you know, nurses. They talked about clothes, about the trenches. I saw one of their pieces, which is about the trenches, which was, you know, really beautiful and really well done. They worked with the Royal Ballet to come in and teach them classes, and then they take field trips to go see other dances. So yeah, a really amazing organization. They're different than Amiki because they're really focused on education, right? And not that Amiki isn't, but on almost like traditional classical education. However, these were still inclusive and open and spaces with really patient instructors. They really challenged the students to remember the terms in the choreography. They asked them to work on technical elements, to analyze choreography, to watch each other, speaking about what they liked and why. I watched one of their troops practicing the Romeo and Juliet dance, which was awesome, and one of these guys was moving around the room, and I could have watched him all day. He was so beautiful. And what is the difference between the dancers I met in the UK, who had learning disabilities, as they say in the UK, or intellectual disability, versus the dancers in the US? Nothing, except for opportunity. They have been given amazing teachers with awesome skill sets, training the participants. They are giving them time and space to be creative and focused on art making. I headed out to Plymouth, which is just before you get to Cornwall. So it's a coastal town. And Plymouth has an exploding arts scene, I was told, and bore witness to. The Theatre Royal in Plymouth they have a subsidiary, a corollary or building called TR2, which is where I took classes while I was there. It's a stunning space with 360, or with, well, not quite 360, but 270 views of the water. Just a lovely building filled with lovely people. But they had actually, while I was there, they had unveiled this like massive statue, which they had commissioned. And it was like a really big deal. Everyone in the community was out, you know, as they sort of witnessed the unveiling of this statue, which was a really big deal, and I think spoke to the value the community was placing on art and on the theater. I took class with Far Flung Dance Theater, so they have Plymouth. And Far Flung Dance Theater is founded and directed by the lovely Claire Beckett. I did not take this photo of Claire, I stole it off the interwebs. And the classes I took at Far Flung Dance Theater, I started with, it's called This Girl Can Move. And so this class was all about providing women empowerment through art making. So the women were encouraged to make their own solos. They were offered really, really clear and positive encouragement and also criticism and feedback about the work they were making. They were all working with this Serena Williams ad about how, you know, like a girl. So all of their dances and all their solos were based around this idea of overcoming adversity. Then I took the advanced company class led by Sophie. In this class, there was no codified language. There was never plie or tendu. If the task was to bend, then that was what she said. You bend in some way, shape, or form. Same thing if, you know, an arabesque or where the leg stretches out behind you was just a stretch of some fashion. And so all of the phrase work was taught like this, with a bend or a stretch, and a jump might become a toss. And so you were able to either follow Sophie, or you could also make your own translation, and people did that. It wasn't like, oh, or do what you want, and then everyone does what the one person does. It was a really open space. When we went across the floor, Sophie offered a variety of different options. She gave like 3 modifications. You could either do it standing up, sitting down, laying down, or anything else. And again, people sort of took their choices as they needed. I also took their community class, which took place afterwards, and people stayed from the earlier class to volunteer and to be present and support in class. And also they had another group of dancers come in. All of this class was a creative movement approach, thinking about the ocean and water. So they have something called tidal surge, where they go out to the aquarium. There's a photo of their advertisement here where you can see one woman is laying across the back of someone else's wheelchair, and there's a long, like, plastic train. And so it's like a community event. People are invited to come. And so I think it's like the last Friday of every month they go out and do that. So all of this class is based around the ocean and water imagery. As you can see in the picture, there's just blowing bubbles. And then there's just like some good old-fashioned flocking, or just basically follow the leader. The classes are really challenging. They're really advanced, in spite of still being inclusive and open. Final stop was Glasgow, where I went up to Independence. Independence is an organization founded by Karen Anderson. this is just Glasgow. This has nothing to do with the company themselves. So they started with one class, and then they got up to, I think currently they're running 38 classes a week. They have a number of performing companies, including
We performed there.
You did? Including their touring company, which are actually going to be out in New York in 2020. So I hope to interact with them then, since I'm moving to New York. And I had the chance to teach class, but I also took class. And again, it was very open, task-oriented, improvisational structures with just a great sense of community in the room. I had the opportunity to actually see their touring company perform in Manchester. I went to an organization called Z Arts, which was hosting their Access Family Fun Days. So there were like dance classes and different events for people with disabilities. And the performance I saw was called Four Go Wild in Wellies. And it was charming, and it's designed for ages 3 to 5, but like I was super entertained the whole time, so I don't know if that's a reflection on the quality of the choreography or my entertainment value. But no, it was an amazing show. It was great. It was fun, and all the performers were obviously, again, included. It wasn't that, some people were given more choreography or less. Everyone was doing what they did really amazingly. I actually will admit that I found myself constantly bumping up against like my own expectations and my own ableism as I was watching dancers all across the UK. I just kept kind of finding myself, well wait, but, and having to like reset my own expectations. So that was also an important thing to note. So yeah, it's just a charming and delightful show. And something else that I saw a lot of was disability-led performance. So I saw a performance called Melanade by a woman, Bex Turner. She has dyslexia, and this entire performance was really about thinking about like standardized testing and the way this is or is not beneficial. And so again, thinking about different learning styles and the way different people learn. She passed out this lovely brochure at the show with information about dyslexia. I also went to the Festival of Rest and Resistance, which was at Battersea Art Center. I also did not take this photo. I stole it from Wikipedia. And so the Battersea Art Center had set themselves up as an art gallery space, but also a performance space. All of the performances were relaxed, so you could kind of come and go as you needed. There was no expected behavior of how to watch a show. People were free to be. And the show that I saw was called Girl Meets Boy. It was by a company called Blink Dance Theater, and they are directed by disabled performers. And this show was amazing because it was really clear they were thinking about access and accessibility like all the way through. So for example, the sign language interpreter was a part of the performance. She didn't like stand on the side, except for sometimes, but she was choreographed and interspersed through the show. They're wearing on their clothes macrame symbols, which is another form of communication used either on an iPad or some sort of a tablet. And the one gentleman communicates in that way, and so he also, at different points in the show, was communicating with his tablet. In this scene, which is hilarious, everyone was like coming to Dr. Love, and Dr. Love would just be like, no, got it. And then he would hit the song, and then the song would play, and usually it didn't make any sense, which was totally the point, hilarious. And then also there was sometimes the iPad was hooked up so people could draw on it and sort of, again, be involved in the show in that way, through this like live sort of painting on the wall. And also, at one point, they audio described, I'll come back to her. At one point, they audio described the movements of the dancers live, and it was pumped in, everyone was listening to it, it was part of the sound score. Frances, is one of the directors, and Francesca was like the host of the show. It was a dating show. And Francesca was awesome, but there's, I think that she performs in a disability drag troupe in the area. So again, things I just hadn't thought about. Like, oh yes, of course, people should do drag. Next, I will start a drag troupe. Awesome. And also the way that they were asking for feedback was inclusive. So there were pictures on the wall. You could either write, you could talk to someone, you could be in a video, or you could just take a sticker and put it on the performance or the scene that you liked. So even, again, the way that feedback was being gathered was considerate of all the people coming to the show. So what did I learn? What is the information that I gathered? Because obviously, well, no, not obviously. I was talking to my husband, I was like, I didn't want to come home. I was crying in the airport. I just wanted to stay in the UK, of course. And I was like, I just want to stay and dance with the Miki. And his response was like, well, wouldn't that be too easy? Like, shouldn't you go home and like do your own work? Don't you love to work? So here I am. So it means I'm going to eventually need some funding someday. So the benefits I saw, the things that I saw people really excelling and growing in, of course, physical strength, physical flexibility, coordination, stability, stamina, range of motion. But also social engagement. Isolation can be such a problem for the disabled community. I know my mother struggled with it. I know that my sister can struggle with it. So this was an opportunity for people to socialize, to experience community, to work with a group, and to experience synchrony or moving together with another human. There are cognitive benefits in terms of working on problem-solving skills, memory skills, analysis, focus, all the things that we dancers already know dance provides for us. And there is creative growth, not only in the artistry, self-expression, imagination, and creation. And finally, personal growth in terms of self-worth, independence, confidence, and empowerment. Wolfgang said something really, really lovely to me after one of the classes. He said, people are really drawn to you. They can sense that you're safe. But I felt safe too. At every moment in these classes, I felt just free from judgment, of my own judgment, other people's judgment. Free from literally all the shit that divides us, able to just share a dance, rocking, making eye contact, free from self-consciousness, knowing that each of us are fine just as we are. The difference, again, between what I experienced here and what I had the chance to witness in the UK is simply that the gatekeepers of who can and cannot access this art form have been removed and replaced with opportunity. When people are given the tools and knowledge in an environment that supports their unique and diverse skill sets, they are allowed to flower and flourish in their own time, on their own terms. And flourish they will, providing beautiful, innovative, challenging artwork that contributes meaningfully to our communities. Thank you for coming, and thank you for hanging out. Anyone have any questions?
How responsive are people? Do they just jump in? It feels like they've been doing this. It's an established group that has been together, and so they're used to doing it. Were you part of a group that was newer to each other or to dancing? And does it take time, or are they more readily available than able-bodied people?
I don't know, Patrick. I did notice that one of the women at the Far Flung Dance Theater had actually just started coming. She was really new. But again, she was like on stage, not on stage. She was, in the space working really hard. I don't know. I'm sure, with every one of us, it just varies from person to person. But yeah, again, like you said, I think most of the people who are coming to these classes are come regularly, have been coming for a really long time. Some of the people I know Wolfgang has been working with for just years and years and years. So, these are really established communities. Adrian?
Is there any curation to who dances with whom within any of the exercises?
Yes. Yeah. No, there was. Yes, you could see Wolfgang's mind working. Like, for example, he put Chrissy on a bench, which makes sense because she's blind. So it's a really safe space for her to be. And then, yes, there's curation, but it's maybe not always like non-disabled versus, disabled. It's maybe not always like in terms of level, but just in or level of ability, but just in terms of like who, might look beautiful together, or, because he knows all these people, they're all in his company, maybe interesting challenges. The same, I think, as any of us would curate our students.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of, again, like, for example, in the yoga class, we're all sitting in a circle, and like she very clearly like spaced us out with who had who might need some motor support and who didn't. So, and again, it wasn't always like yes, of course, I was supporting someone who needed perhaps a little assistance with guiding his arms to the correct location. But it, was also people who were disabled and were in the space who didn't have any motor control issues, who were also helping someone who perhaps was in a wheelchair or something else. So yeah, yes, it was a consideration, but not always so like one or the other.
Right. Thank you.
Dawson?
Do you know where the funding for some of these programs comes from? Do the participants have to pay to take the classes or be involved in them?
Yeah, but they're all like really low cost. Like Magpies was like $5 or £5 a class. Yeah, it wasn't like 30. It wasn't like Lululemon, like whatever core power yoga classes.
But
I didn't ask a lot about funding. To
is
be
the
honest.
structure a little bit more like you just pay per class like you would for a yoga class, or like you are part of the company, you pay for a semester and it's gonna?
I got the feeling it was drop-in pay because of the way people were sharing. I don't actually know that for sure. But yeah, I know a lot of these are funded by city council, and obviously there's a lot of outside funding. And also I recognize that like the way we're set up in the US is just different than the way they're set up there. So yeah, I know that I friended all these people on Facebook now, so I see their fundraising and stuff going on. So
The main teacher, what is his name again?
Wolfgang?
Wolfgang. What was his training?
Okay, I googled the name. I forgot it. Hildegard? Do you know? Okay.
It's actually some Wigman.
Yeah, but it's I think it's German expressionist.
Yes.
That was, yeah. And I know Colin, who again is Amiki's education director, we just talked about Peanut Bausch. And so yeah, it's the more would you call it anti-technique? No. But it's the more expressionist perspective, yeah.
It's interesting because we have a friend whose kid paralyzed from the waist down, and when she was growing up, there was so little support for her medically or swimming pools or anything like that. But when I first started going to the UK to work, it was in 1980, and there was already incredible support for this work. So it's an interesting split. It's kind of almost like the flip of here, because there isn't that artistic support for disabled community, but there is much more support for, parking and swimming pools that you can get into and things like that. So this kid had nothing.
Yeah, well, our ADA was passed before, sort of 5 years before their version of legislation. So yeah, and like I said, like in every granny of England, it seemed like something was going on. I could have stayed all year and just popped around from place to place. So
Fulbright.
I'm gonna take a break first. Was there other questions?
Are you bringing the drag show to
Am
the
I bringing
US?
direction? Let's do it.
Is the first Friday coming up?
like I said, going to New York, anything's possible in New York City.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm
Thank you.
sorry that the sound system didn't work. That's really odd. But we'll see if we can get that fixed for the next time.
All right, thank you. Signing
Thank
off.
you.
Thanks for hanging out, y'all.